Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into some truly groundbreaking clinical research today. We're looking at post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, and how psilocybin is being researched not just to, manage the symptoms, but to actually initiate a profound system reset for traumatized brains. Now, if you've been following the latest developments in psychiatric medicine, you already know this is a rapidly evolving space, and the data we have right now is absolutely fascinating.
So let's kick things off by fundamentally changing how we think about trauma. Here's the core premise. PTSD is not a memory problem. It is a defined failure in fear extinction. Your brain hasn't failed emotionally. It's effectively learned to fear, but it has completely lost the biological ability to unlearn that fear. It's a physiological roadblock, literally a jam in the system.
And we really need to grasp the sheer scale of this crisis. Right now, there are 8 million Americans carrying the weight of PTSD. This includes a massive demographic of military veterans. We're talking about populations where lifetime PTSD rates soar above 30% for Vietnam vets and up to 20% for folks who served in Afghanistan and Iraq. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. A fear extinction failure. 2. Rewiring the fear circuit. 3. Disconnecting trauma from present. 4. Why the experience matters. And finally, 5. The clinical reality. Section 1. A fear extinction failure, or the broken system. So before we even touch on treatments, we have to establish what's mechanically going wrong. The absolutely crucial point here is understanding fear extinction. That's the neurological mechanism by which learned fear is successfully unlearned. It's the biological process that normally allows a traumatic event to just become history, right? In a healthy brain, a threat passes, the brain updates its models, and the fear just naturally fades. PTSD is what happens when this extinction process gets blocked and just can't complete itself. To understand this block, we have to look at the hardware glitch happening inside a PTSD brain. It basically involves 3 converging changes. Think of it like a car. The amygdala, which is the brain's threat detector, is hyperactive. The accelerator is just stuck to the floor. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, which is supposed to be the rational braking system that calms the amygdala down, is hypoactive. The brakes are failing. On top of that, the hippocampus, which gives context to our memories, actually shrinks in volume. So the car is speeding out of control and the driver has no idea what road they're on. Which brings us to a really staggering urgent statistic: 50%. That is the failure rate of our current first-line treatments for PTSD, like SSRIs. Literally, half of patients do not meaningfully respond. When half of the people suffering from such a debilitating condition are being left behind by standard medicine, we don't just need a new pill, We need an entirely new paradigm. Moving to Section 2. Rewiring the fear circuit, the hardware reset. So how does psilocybin physically interact with this locked-up circuitry? Well, it acts primarily on 5-HT2A serotonin receptors. And guess where those are densely located? Exactly where PTSD does all its damage. In the prefrontal cortex, psilocybin restores authority, turning those brakes back on and increasing BDNF, which is a crucial protein for brain growth. Simultaneously, in the amygdala, it actually reduces reactivity. It takes the foot off the accelerator. It temporarily creates the exact opposite neural state of PTSD. And the magnitude of this effect is just massive. Research shows that psilocybin effectively reduces amygdala hyperreactivity to trauma cues by a whopping 40%. This creates a temporary window where a patient can re-encounter trauma memories without triggering their full, overwhelming threat response. But it gets better. We aren't just talking about a temporary chemical shift here. We are talking about rapid structural change in neuroplasticity occurring within hours of a single dose. Unlike traditional antidepressants that take weeks to slowly coax the brain into adapting, the 5-HT2A activation and BDNF release from psilocybin prompt the rapid growth of new dendritic spines. It physically rebuilds the brain's connections to unlock that stuck fear circuit. Section 3. Disconnecting trauma from present. The network shift. All right, let's zoom out a bit to see how these regions talk to each other. In a 2024 landmark neuroimaging study, Siegel and colleagues revealed something incredible. Psilocybin causes a persistent decrease in connectivity between the default mode network, which is the brain's self-referential mind-wandering center, and the anterior hippocampus, which contextualizes fear. Psilocybin literally desynchronizes these networks, and this effect lasts for weeks after the drug has completely left the body. So why does this network shift matter so much? Because in PTSD, the compromised hippocampus fails to anchor fear memories in the past, allowing them to constantly intrude into the present. Patients literally feel like the trauma is happening right now. By desynchronizing this pathological loop, psilocybin physically interrupts the spontaneous, intrusive replay of those traumatic memories.
Section 4. Why the experience matters, the catalyst. Now, this naturally leads to a question I know a lot of you are probably asking. Does psilocybin just erase traumatic memories? Is it some sort of, I don't know, chemical bleach for the brain? The answer is a definitive no. It doesn't erase memories. Rather, it changes the brain's capacity to update them. A fascinating 2023 study published in Nature found that psychedelics actually reopen the brain's critical learning period. That's a window of heightened neuroplasticity that normally closes up when we're teenagers. It gives the traumatized adult brain the incredible flexibility of a developing brain, allowing that to finally process trauma without the usual emotional avoidance. But to successfully use this open window, the subjective quality of the trip, the set and setting, matters immensely. Studies consistently measure two extremes here. On one side, you have oceanic boundlessness, this profound feeling of unity and dissolved boundaries. Patients who experience this show significantly better outcomes because their emotional defenses drop, allowing them to safely process their trauma. On the flip side, we have to carefully consider the dread of ego dissolution. That's a fearful loss of control, essentially a bad trip, which predicts worse outcomes. This is exactly why specialized therapeutic support during the session is a strict requirement, not just an optional add-on. Section 5. The clinical reality, the evidence check. So, what does the actual trial data say today? Well, the most direct evidence comes from the McGowan 2025 Phase 2 trial. They administered a single 25 milligram dose of a synthetic psilocybin called COMP360. Within an hour, the acute effects hit. For the next 2 weeks, that amazing neuroplasticity window remained wide open for integration therapy. And at the 12-week mark, they found clinically meaningful, sustained reductions in PTSD symptoms. The therapeutic benefits significantly outlasted the acute effects of the drug itself. It's also super helpful to contextualize this against MDMA, which is currently the gold standard in psychedelic trauma research with its Phase 3 data. They actually operate in different but complementary lanes. MDMA works via a massive serotonin flood that creates intense emotional safety and social connection, which is fantastic for severe relational trauma. Psilocybin, on the other hand, works through 5-HT2A agonism to create neuroplasticity and a shift in perspective. That makes it potentially better for treatment-resistant PTSD characterized by very rigid thought loops. Honestly, we're going to need both tools. But look, we have to maintain strict scientific integrity here and look at the limitations. The McGowan trial was Phase 2. It was open label, meaning there was no placebo. It had a really small 22-person sample. Expectancy effects, where a patient gets better simply because they strongly believe they took a powerful drug, those absolutely cannot be ruled out. Furthermore, early trials systematically exclude those with severe, complex trauma or suicidality. We are looking at early, promising science right now, not a confirmed widespread cure just yet. Yet, despite those limitations, we cannot ignore the human stakes. The source material highlights that there are 20 million people in the United States alone carrying a disorder that has not been meaningfully improved by the current standard of care. That is 20 million reasons why this research is being so aggressively pursued and why getting this science right is absolutely crucial. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. The underlying neurobiology is undeniably clear. Psilocybin successfully targets the exact hardware malfunction that causes PTSD. It restores prefrontal authority, it dampens the amygdala, and it reopens neuroplasticity. But will this powerful early clinical signal survive the strict randomized placebo-controlled rigors of Phase 3 trials? The trials are coming, the data is being gathered right now, and those results are going to define the future of psychiatric medicine. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on the science.